shot y'all?
When Tupac was robbed and shot in an ambush, he could have suspected anyone except his own friend, Notorious B.I.G, but everything changed. After B.I.G released a revealing song, which not only made him the main suspect in that attack, but also turned their friendship into the most deadly feud in rap history. Today, I'm going to tell you the story behind the song Ruxotia by Notorious B.I.G. I'm Guilherme, and you're watching Decipher Hits.
Who shot y'all? Separate the weak from the obsolete, hard to creep them Brooklyn street.
At the end of '94, Tupac Shakur went through the worst time of his life. He was facing a rape charge where he could get up to 25 years in prison. And all the money he had already made from his music and film career was going down the drain as he spent his last cents on lawyers. To make matters worse, in the middle of all this drama, Tupac was ambushed, robbed, shot, and beaten in the lobby of a studio in New York. It took him a long time to suspect that this whole thing was set up by people very close to him, including his own friend, Notorious B.I.G, who was also at the studio that fateful night. But what was just a suspicion ended up turning into pure hatred, when, a short time later, B.I.G released a song called Ruxotia, Who Shot Ya, in an ironic tone, making Tupac start a war against B.I.G, which unfortunately would end with the tragic death of both. But why did B.I.G release that song? Was he really behind the whole ambush? To understand all of this, we need to go back to 1993. That year, Tupac was already an established rapper, with 2 albums released, while Notorious B.I.G was still getting ready to release his first record. The two ended up meeting and, in a short time, became friends. It was so strong that when B.I.G went to California, he slept on Tupac's couch, and Pac gave rap tips to his new friend.
I used to tell him, if you want to make money, you need to rap for the ladies, not for the guys. I told him, don't rap for the guys, rap for the ladies. They're the ones who'll buy your CDs, and the guys will want what the ladies want.
B.I.G admired Tupac so much that he asked him to be his manager, since B.I.G was afraid that his newly created label, Puff Daddy's Bad Boy Records, wouldn't be able to launch his career. But Tupac refused. No, stick with Puff. He's gonna make you a star. Tupac was a visionary. He knew what he was talking about, but unfortunately he didn't know how to choose his friends well. At that time, besides his rap career, Tupac was focused on building a career in film. It was during one of those times while he was in New York for a movie shoot, Tupac met a man named Haitian Jack in the VIP area of a nightclub. Pac was impressed by the guy's status and reputation, who was respected by everyone in the city, and lived a life of luxury that caught Tupac's eye.
Hey, this is my turf. I just want to show a little kindness. You get it? And if you need anything in this club, it's my spot. Just let me know.
The problem was that Jack was the leader of a dangerous gang and associated with some drug dealers. It was serious business. Notorious B.I.G even warned his friend to stay away from this guy. But Tupac didn't care about that, since Jack introduced him to high society life. He taught him how to buy the best jewelry and diamonds, and even gave him a Rolex worth over $20,000. Tupac didn't realize it, but all of this had a hidden agenda behind it. Jack, a friend of Jimmy Henchman, a drug dealer and music industry mogul, known for extorting up-and-coming artists. Jimmy had his eye on Tupac's talent, and used Jack to convince Pac to join his label. But, knowing Henchman's reputation, Tupac turned down the invitation. Henchman hated being refused. He wasn't going to give up that easily. On November 14, 1993, Tupac was at a nightclub when Haitian Jack introduced him to a 19-year-old girl named Ayanna Jackson. The two hooked up that same night, but Tupac didn't show any interest in seeing her again. 4 days later, Tupac was at the hotel waiting for showtime, and with him were his assistant, Charles Fuller, and his friend, Notorious B.I.G. At a certain point, Haitian Jack also arrived at the hotel with his friend Trevor, and Notorious B.I.G decided to leave. He didn't feel comfortable around Jack, but B.I.G didn't realize he had forgotten his gun. In the hotel room, Jack told Tupac that he had paid for a taxi to bring Ayanna Jackson to the hotel as well, even though Pac had said he didn't want to see her anymore. When Ayanna arrived, she teased Tupac and he took her to the room. where, according to him, it was just a massage. When things were about to heat up, Rayshawn, Jack, and the other guys entered the room. Tupac got scared, but since he saw that Ayanna didn't mind, he let her continue the massage, hoping the guys. And when the guys started touching her, he felt uncomfortable and left the room because, in his words, he wasn't into that group stuff. Pass. He went to another room where he was taking care of some things on the phone with his promoter until he felt tired and went to sleep a few minutes later. People. Ayanna came into the room screaming desperately.
Pac, why did you let it happen? Why did you do this to me?
What's going on?
I promise you'll regret setting me up like this.
Haitian Jack, on the other hand, seemed pretty calm.
Oh, she's high. I'll take care of it. Relax, man.
Go take care of it.
Everyone went down to the lobby and didn't come back until PAC started to get worried, and went down too to see what was going on. But when he got downstairs, everything fell apart.
That senior Shakur over there? On the floor.
Tupac, it's Haitian. Jack, Trevor, and Charles Fuller were indicted in New York court, not only for rape, but also for illegal possession of weapons. Since Big's gun was also found in the hotel. But Tupac never snitched on his friend. He only claimed his innocence regarding the rape. Tupac started to suspect Haitian Jack when he found out that he used his influence to have his case tried separately, something that would only strengthen Ayanna's side. Jackson, who accused Tupac of being the main culprit of the crime, making him subject to the highest sentence among all the defendants, up to 25 years in prison. Tupac began to believe that Haitian Jack was cooperating with the police to get a lighter sentence, and from then on, he no longer trusted him. A year went by, the trial was still going on, and Tupac had already spent all his money on lawyers. With every interview he gave, he became more outraged with Haitian Jack and hinted at how he felt wronged for believing that Jack was the main one to blame for all of this. Haitian Jack watched those interviews, and little by little, he got more irritated with Tupac. Tupac was cool when I was doing things for him, until we got that damn lawsuit that we could have easily won. He let his lawyers turn him against me, and I'll never forgive him for that. Jimmy Hatchman wasn't happy about any of this either, since Haitian Jack was pretty much his protege. Despite that, at this point, Tupac still trusted Big and Puffy a lot, so much so that he was at Puffy's 25th birthday party. On November 4th, 1994, where this photo was taken, the last one of them together at that party, Tupac ignored Haitian Jack, which for gangsters is a huge sign of disrespect, and that made him even more upset. But things reached their limit 3 weeks later, one day before he was shot. Tupac gave a historic interview as he left the courthouse, where he vented about all the injustice he was experiencing.
She wasn't prepared for what happened? Then where are the people who did this? They were all in the same hotel as me, in the same room as me. Why am I the only one in court? I didn't do anything. I'm being sued just for being in the same place as other guys. Where are they?
Tupac's courage was something admirable, but unfortunately it was bringing him closer and closer to death. That same day at nightfall, Tupac decided to help out Big's friend, DJ Ron G. He went to his studio with his friend Stretch and recorded a song for Ron G without charging anything. It was something Ron G had wanted for a long time, but Tupac had never managed to do it before. This just shows how, up until that point, Tupac and Big were really close, especially since that was the worst possible time for Tupac to do anything for free. He had already lost a role in a movie, in a TV series, and his bills were just piling up. During his trial, he spent mornings and afternoons in court, and at night he jumped from studio to record songs. All my shows were being canceled. All the money from my records was going to lawyers, and the money from the movies I sent to my family. So I did that. I rapped for the guys to make some money. It was already late at night, and the recordings were almost over, but someone kept sending messages. On Tupac's pager, it was Jimmy Henchman, saying he had a job for him and wanted him to call back. The last thing Tupac wanted was to take a job for this guy, especially after everything Tupac said about Jack. Jimmy must have been really pissed at him, but at that moment, need won out. Tupac returned the call. Jimmy said that a rapper named Leo Sean wanted to record a song with him, and that Jimmy would pay $7,500 for this feature.
Jimmy Kapanga wants me on Sean's album. The guy keeps calling non-stop. I thought you were cool with those guys. Not at all, man. But I really need this.
Tupac had a bad feeling, which interestingly was reflected in the first line of the song he recorded for Ron G. Even with all this suspicion, Pac accepted the invitation and went to the recording studio recommended by Jimmy Henchman, Quad Studios in New York. Tupac went there with 3 other people: his brother-in-law Zayd, his manager, Freddie Moore, and his friend and right-hand man, Stretch. On the way to the studio, they stopped to buy weed and ended up taking a little longer. Jimmy kept sending messages asking where Tupac was and why he was taking so long. When Tupac called back, Jimmy said he was going to pay by check since he didn't have cash at the moment. Tupac got really annoyed by that and cursed Jimmy out with a lot of harsh words, saying that Jimmy Henchman better have his money ready, or else he wouldn't go. Jimmy just hung up the phone. In Tupac's eyes, Jimmy Henchman was trying to clean up his dark past by getting into the music industry. He had already been charged with gun possession, drug trafficking, and murder. Besides, he was one of the most dangerous guys in New York. So disrespecting him like that was a terrible idea.
When he hung up, they asked him, "Who were you arguing with on the phone like that?" And he said, "It's Jimmy Henchman's guy." And the guy said, "Man, are you crazy? Do you know who Jimmy Henchman is? Or what he can do to you?"
In 2012, the robber who led the ambush, known as Dexter Isaac, published this book, where he detailed who ordered it, who knew about it, and how the whole ambush worked. According to Dexter, it was right after those insults that he got the order to rob Tupac. However, the order didn't come directly from Jimmy Henchman. The person who called him was a man Dexter preferred not to reveal. He just identified him. As Paulie, he said that he was close to Jimmy Henchman and that he had a strong Jamaican accent. Paulie asked, "Are you in New York, my friend?" And Dexter replied, "Yes, I just got back to the city." Paulie let out a huge sigh of relief. "Dexter, I need to talk to you. Jimmy wants you to do a job for him. He needs you to rob the rapper Tupac Shakur to teach him a lesson about respect." Paulie explained the whole thing about the insult, and Dexter replied, "So, what do I get?" And Paulie said, Jimmy, you can keep all the jewelry from the heist except for the biggest diamond ring. Jimmy wants to give it as a gift to his fiancée. Besides that, he'll give you $2,500 to pay the henchmen who are going to help you. Paulie gave a full description of all the jewelry Tupac was wearing, and the estimated value of each piece, which, in total, was worth almost $100,000. It was strange that Jimmy had given all this information without even having met Tupac that day. But soon, you'll understand how he knew all of this. Dexter then called his 2 protégés, whom he identifies as JD and Spank. They armed themselves, got into a minivan, and met up with Paulie, who was in a silver Lexus, and he led the robbers toward Quad Studios. When they got there, they stopped across the street in front of the studio, where there was a restaurant. Jimmy called Dexter and said, "Come up here to the 8th floor, but leave the rest of the guys downstairs. Bash, come up here." Dexter got up there and Jimmy was waiting for him. But Dexter also revealed that he saw Puff Daddy talking to Andre Harrell, the owner of Leo Sean's record label, and that he also saw Notorious. Big was sitting on the couch talking to his cousin, Leo Ciaz, near the window. This contradicts Leo C's version, who claims that he and Big were 2 floors up and had no idea that Puff was in the building. But, according to Dexter, they were all in the same room, and besides them, he also saw Sean in the recording booth. Waiting for Tupac to arrive, Dexter was bothered to see so many people there. Dexter asked Jimmy, "Does anyone else here know what's going to happen?" And Jimmy replied, "He knows." Turning his head toward Puff, Daddy looked into Dexter's eyes, and that's when he knew Puff was involved too. Gene Deal, Puff's former bodyguard, has also confirmed that Puff knew everything. Sean, on the other hand, didn't know. And just like Tupac, he was just being used as bait. So when Dexter went downstairs and returned to the lobby, Jimmy emphasized that Tupac was not to be killed. He just had to beat him up and rob him to teach him a lesson. Dexter waited inside the car across the street. 10 minutes later, Jimmy sent him a message. Tupac should arrive in about 15 minutes, and he's with some guys. All this real-time information, said Dexter. He realized that there was someone with Tupac who was acting as an informant for Jimmy. Dexter explained his plan to his henchman. Spunk, I want you to stay cool in the lobby and act like a security guard. When they come in, JD and I will come from behind and approach him. It was already the early morning of November 30th, and around midnight, Tupac and his partners arrived at Quad Studios. Notorious Big had just taken a break from recording. He was recording, together with Leo Cece, the song Player's Anthem, the first track from his group, Junior Mafia.
Grab your dick if you love hip-hop. Rub your titties if you love big pop.
During the break, Cece took the opportunity to smoke a joint by the window and throw water at people passing by on the sidewalk. He was only 17 years old at the time. At one point, he saw Tupac and his friends passing by.
I shouted, "Hey, Pac!" He couldn't see us. He looked up and said, "Who is it?" And I was like, "Yo, it's Cease, Lil Cease. What's up, man?" I said, "Turn the corner. I'll come down to get you." I went back to the room and told Big, "Hey, Big, Pac is downstairs." He said, "No way." And I was like, "For real, he's there." He said, "Tell him to come up."
Even though he still had a bad feeling, Tupac felt more at ease knowing that Leo Cece and Notorious Big were also in the building. Leo Cece then got into the elevator with Nino Brown, another friend from Junior Mafia. At that exact moment, Tupac was approaching the main door of Quad Studios and noticed a man near the entrance, dressed in an army uniform. But Pac only found one detail strange. I've never seen a black man not recognize me in some way, either with envy or with respect. But this guy just looked to see who I was and then looked down. And I didn't even notice because I had just smoked a joint. The man was JD, who had stayed outside just like Dexter to make their move. Right after that, Tupac came in through the main door and noticed another guy wearing the same uniform reading a newspaper. He didn't even look at the rapper either. Tupac also thought that was really strange, but he stayed calm because he had 3 guys with him. And even though they were all unarmed, Tupac himself had 2 Glock pistols on his waist. Another thing that made Pac feel safe was the presence of his friend and right-hand man, Stretch. He had already recorded several songs with Pac, and he was always hanging out with him like a bodyguard, and for good reason. Stretch was 2 meters and 3 centimeters tall. Besides that, Tupac remembered that the guys from the Bronx, Big's neighborhood, used to walk around wearing army uniforms, so these guys could be friends of Big. Pac and his friends went into a dead-end hallway where there was only one elevator at the end. But when Tupac pressed the elevator button, he realized, wait a minute, Big's friends always greet me. But by then, it was already too late.
Don't move, punk! Everybody on the floor! Did you hear the guy? You better stay quiet!
From what I know about crime, if they're coming to rob you, they'll always go after the biggest guy first. But they didn't even touch Stretch, they came straight at me. I thought Stretch was going to fight. He was built like a tower, but everyone just dropped to the ground like sacks of potatoes and I stayed standing. The guys started searching Tupac and looking for weapons and jewelry. And from there, according to Tupac, the story has 2 versions. The guy was pointing at his abdomen and he tried to disarm him. Man. In that moment, the gun went off and hit Tupac in the leg. He fell to the ground and then was kicked, pistol whipped, and shot 4 more times. Twice in the head, once in the hand, and once in the leg. One of the shots hit his manager, Freddie Moore, in the abdomen. But according to Stretch, Tupac was only shot once, and it was self-inflicted. That account was confirmed by Detective Greg Kading, who investigated the deaths of Tupac and Big in 2022. Greg revealed on a podcast. First of all, Tupac was not shot in the head. He was pistol whipped on the head after trying to draw his own gun from his waistband. In the heat of the moment, he ends up shooting himself, and the bullet goes through his groin area. According to Greg, the injury to his hand was due to the recoil of the gun's slide. And it makes sense if we think that the order at that moment was not to kill Tupac, and the criminals wouldn't dare disobey Jimmy Hatchman. In this case, it's likely that the shot Payaki fired at himself was the same one that hit Freddie's abdomen, who was lying on the floor. All of this happened in a matter of seconds. At that moment, the elevator door opened. Lucis and Nino Brown had just arrived on the ground floor and came across the whole scene.
And when I was almost leaving, two guys came, "Get back in the elevator!" Damn!
CZ says he was so terrified by the situation that he kept pressing the button, trying to close the door, without realizing he was pressing the open button. In Dexter Isaac's words, CZ's eyes were so wide open that he looked like a crackhead. After giving a slap when the door finally closed, Lucis ran to tell Notorious Big what was happening. Big told everyone to stay in the room and went alone toward the elevator. The criminals escaped with jewelry belonging to Tupac and his manager, Freddie Moore. Curiously, the only piece of Tupac's jewelry that the criminals didn't try to steal was his diamond-encrusted Rolex watch, which Tupac had received as a gift. A gift from Haitian Jack the previous year. They left the watch on purpose, to send a message that Tupac quickly understood. Never disrespect Haitian Jack and Jimmy Henchman. Unlike Jimmy Henchman, who is now serving a life sentence for other crimes, Haitian Jack is still free and lives in the Dominican Republic. In 2017, he was interviewed by Fox on an investigative program. The reporter asked him what he knew about the attack at Quad Studios, and he ended up letting something compromising slip.
I got the call about 30 seconds after it happened. He said, "Listen, I did it, man, but we had problems." I said, "Wrong number," and hung up.
At the very least, it's strange. If Dexter was going to call someone to say there were problems with the robbery, it would be Jimmy, or at most, Paulie. That's why I believe Paulie was none other than Haitian Jack himself. A guy who, like Puff Daddy, is still out there, free. And it makes sense, because it was Jack who knew the price of all Tupac's jewelry, since they had bought them together, Jones. Dexter might have made up that detail about the Jamaican accent, just so he wouldn't snitch on Haitian Jack, who, unlike Jimmy Henchman, is still friends with Dexter to this day. After the criminals fled, Zed, Tupac's brother-in-law, left Quad Studios to find out where they went. Outside, he didn't see anyone running. He only saw a police car that was parked right in front of the studio. How could the police not have seen the guys running? And why were the police looking at him with a mocking smile? At that moment, he realized that the situation was much dirtier than it seemed, and decided to go back inside the building. Tupac crawled into the elevator and managed to get to the floor where Jimmy Henchman was. But he ended up collapsing because he had suffered many injuries. Meanwhile, CZ and the Junior Mafia crew noticed that Big was taking too long and went down to the lobby to find out what was going on when they got there. They found out that Big hadn't come back. By that time, the police were already in the hall holding everyone there. To collect information about what happened, the ambulance arrived and the doctors took Tupac away on a stretcher. As he passed by the police officers, Tupac looked one of them in the face and recognized him. It was the same one who had arrested him on the day of Ayanna Jackson's alleged rape. What were the odds it was the same police officer? How could the security guard at Quad Studios not be present that night? And why did the investigators dismiss the security camera footage? All the dots were connecting. Pac suspected Jimmy and Haitian, but he still didn't think Big had orchestrated the crime. Up to that point, he just believed that, like Puff Daddy, Big knew everything and didn't warn him.
I asked Biggie what happened. He kept texting me like a bitch, like, "I'll see you." No, man, what happened? It's like when the cops show up in the hood and ask if anyone knows anything and nobody knows. Obviously, they're lying.
That's why when Big went to visit him in the hospital, Tupac's family wouldn't let him into the room. That was the beginning of the split between the two, which gradually escalated into something violent. One of the few people who still had access to Tupac was Stretch, but that also changed after Stretch started visiting him, just to pass on messages from Jimmy Henchman, like, for example, Pac, "Why did you react? They just wanted to discipline you." And also, Jimmy Henchman told me that you're not doing well financially. You don't want to go to war with them. That last sentence, by the way, Tupac even mentions at the end of the song, "Against All Lords."
I remember you said that I wouldn't want to go to war because I wasn't doing well financially. Now I'm doing well financially and I want war.
Tupac thought it was strange that his friend was passing messages from his biggest enemy. And he also stopped trusting him. In his book, Dexter confirmed that Stretch was Jimmy's informant on Tupac's team. Stretch was killed exactly 1 year after the ambush because he owed money to a drug dealer. What about Big? Rumors started spreading around New York that he was involved in Tupac's ambush, and journalists started asking him about it.
And the rumor that's spreading is that we set him up, and that's crazy. That's ridiculous, But I also think that if you get shot 5 times, your mind spins, You get pretty confused, and you end up saying things you didn't mean to say.
Tupac spent only 1 day in the hospital, and the next day, after undergoing surgery in the groin area, Tupac left the hospital and went straight to court to receive his sentence. In the case of Ayanna Jackson, Tupac was sentenced to serve 1 to 4 years in prison. At the trial, he apologized to Ayanna Jackson but insisted on his innocence. His assistant, Charles Fuller, was sentenced to only 4 months, and Hesham Jack was never even arrested, paying just a $1,000 fine and serving 2 years of probation. At that moment, Tupac realized he couldn't trust anyone anymore. Tupac.
My closest friends set me up. My friends, partners, whose families I even took care of. Don't trust anyone.
When they thought the situation couldn't get any worse, something happened that took everyone by surprise just a week after Tupac's arrest. Notorious Big released the song that would start the deadliest feud in rap history.
Who shot ya? Separate the weak from the opsa. Leap hard to creep them Brooklyn streets.
Who Shot You? The title of the song caught a lot of people's attention and still raises questions to this day. In fact, in our community tab, we asked what you would like to know about this song. And a lot of people want to know if there's any proof that it was actually written before Tupac got shot, and to understand how Big had the courage to release it after the attack on Tupac. But if the title grabs your attention, things get even weirder when you look at the title of this song. Even though Notorious Big himself denied it, a lot of people saw this song as a mockery. Because of what Tupac went through at Quad Studios, including Tupac himself, who from that point on saw Big as his main suspect and biggest enemy.
While I'm in jail, strangers say, "Hey, don't you know, it was a friend of Biggie who shot you." That's how I learned who shot me and what happened.
The song doesn't mention any names directly, and when asked, Big just said that Rashosha was about the rivalry between 2 generic gangsters, no one in particular. They're saying that I set Tupac up and got him shot. They're saying that my song Rashosha is about him. That's crazy, considering Tupac himself said that even if this song wasn't about me, he should think like, I'm not going to release this now because he might think it's about him. In his defense, Big and his friends said that Rashosha was recorded before Tupac was shot, which to some extent is true if it weren't for one detail that changes this whole story. At the end of '93, Puff Daddy was producing the second album of the singer Mary J. Blige, My Life. They needed a rapper to perform on the album's interlude, but since Big was still new at the label, Puff called the rapper Keith Murray. But they still needed to find the perfect beat for the interlude, so Puff asked the producer, Nasheen Myrick, for help, who searched through his record collection until he found this beat here.
But just remember this, as long as you live and breathe.
Keith Murray recorded his verse. But Puff thought it could still be better, so he called LL Cool J, but he couldn't finish it. During the recordings, Puff decided to give his new artist, Notorious Big, a chance, and he simply killed it on the track.
Then the shit stopped when I pulled the plot. Neighbors called the cops, said they heard mad shots.
Big's version was incredible, but Puff thought the lyrics were too heavy to put on an R&B album. If he did that, her album would have to get a parental advisory label, and Puff didn't want to do that with Mary J. Blige. So he changed his mind and decided to send to Mary J. only the verse that Keith Murray had already recorded, which actually ended up on her album.
When I'm coming through, grab your cranium for ultimatum, son. I faith subterranean.
So, in a way, it even makes sense to believe that Rachach wasn't aimed at Tupac, since it was recorded a year before the attack at Quad Studios. But what nobody mentions is that this version that Big recorded for Mary J. only had one verse. The one we now know is the first verse of the song after Big's verse was discarded. He didn't want to just throw all that gold away, so sometime later, Big and Puff did a re-recording of this. They created a second verse completely new, and that's how they gave rise to the official version of Ruchacha, the one we know today. There are no records of the exact day this version was recorded, but the lines of the new verse make it very likely that it was indeed recorded after the Quad Studios ambush. Check out what he says in the new lines. 95 USOBs, Junior Mafia USOBs. It doesn't make sense for them to have recorded the song in 93 and for Puff Daddy to be shouting 95. So if they didn't record this version in 95, which was when Tupac was in prison, they must have at most recorded this at the end of 94, close to the date of the ambush. But hold on, there's still more. In the previous line, he said, representing the Queen, Her Royal Highness now, Big says.
Rewind this, bad boys behind this.
Rewind the tape. Bad Boy is behind this? But the most sinister line is when he says this right here.
Turn front page, nigga.
The brave black man became the black man on the front page of the newspaper. Now tell me if this doesn't have a lot to do with what happened to Tupac. Bizarre, right? The song ends with a skit where Big pretends to be finishing off a guy and tells him not to mess with him.
Oh, did I tell you don't fuck with me? Huh? Did I tell you not to fuck with me?
According to rapper Leo Sizz, these lines were written 3 months before the ambush at Quad Studios, and they were supposed to be released on Big's debut album, Ready to Die, from September 1994. But for some reason, Puff Daddy took the track off the album and held it until the following year. According to Sizz, this was something that was out of their control. The person who controlled when a song would be released was the owner of the label, in this case, Puff Daddy.
Back then, we didn't think about release dates. We weren't the ones who controlled that. You know, Puff Daddy would say, leave it to me, and he would release it. Biggie and I wouldn't say, don't release this now. That doesn't even cross your mind when you're totally innocent.
In August 2022, a former president of Bad Boy Records named Kirk Burroughs confirmed this information and revealed something really ugly about what went on behind the scenes in the music industry. In the interview, Kirk literally admitted that he and Puff were using Big and the other artists as mere pawns on a chessboard, and that Puff released Who Shot Ya right after Tupac's arrest, on purpose to take advantage of the hype and boost the sales of Big's album, basically using a man's pain for their own benefit.
Was Who Shot Ya about Tupac?
All right, let me explain it to you like this. We knew what we were involved in. I knew. Sean, Puffy knew. The artist might not have known everything that was going on. I see this as an excellent example of how my former partner used to work.
Just so you have an idea of how messed up the whole thing was, Kirk even commented with a smile on his face that Big's death was beneficial for their label.
Everything was growing just as we wanted, but we wanted to grow even more. But we were only able to grow as much as we wanted when Biggie died. That's what made us expand, his death. But we were working on it, and those were the challenges along the way.
Unfortunately, the two greatest rappers of all time didn't realize in time that they were being cruelly manipulated against each other. Tupac was wronged, shot, imprisoned, and humiliated. But, incredibly, nothing that had happened up to that point was as violent as what was about to come next. In response to Ruchacha, Tupac released the hit song, Hit 'Em Up.
Grab your blocks when you see Tupac. Call the cops when you see Tupac.
The threat in the form of music. It sparked a true war between East Coast and West Coast rappers, and unfortunately it ended with the death of these two rap legends. To understand this story, just click on this video. I'll stop here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.